A brilliant orphan girl is reduced to a servant in her own family's house, until a hidden scholarship and a cruel betrayal change her destiny forever. Era's world once moved to a gentle rhythm. Every morning began with her mother's soft humming drifting from the kitchen, mixing with the smell of warm oil and fresh breakfast. The sun would slip through the window, touching the walls like a blessing. Era would wake up smiling, already planning her day, already dreaming ahead. Her father never left for work without ruffling her hair. "My little nurse," he would call her, laughing, because Era loved wrapping bandages around her dolls and pretending to heal them. She believed, with the quiet certainty only children have, that one day she would wear a white uniform and help people feel better. In school, she was bright and curious, always asking questions, always at the top of her class. Teachers spoke of her future with pride. Neighbors smiled when she passed. Life was simple, but it was full. In the evenings, the family would sit together, sharing stories as the sky darkened. Era would listen, her head resting against her mother's arm, feeling safe, feeling seen. She did not know how rare such peace was. She did not know how fragile happiness could be. Then came the day that stole everything. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that never warns you it will be the last of its kind. Era stayed back from school, humming as she packed away her books. She was thinking about her next exam, about how proud her parents would be when she brought home another good result. How could she know that fate was already racing toward her? On a sharp bend of the road, a speeding vehicle lost control. Metal screamed, tires burned, and in one violent moment the world shattered. By the time Era arrived, the crowd had already gathered. Faces were pale. Voices were hushed. Someone held her shoulders as words fell on her ears like stones. An accident. Too fast. No survivors. She stared at them, not understanding. How could words undo a morning filled with laughter? At the graveside, the earth was still red and raw. The air felt heavy, as if even the sky was struggling to breathe. Era stood there in a black dress her mother had sewn with love, watching as the soil covered the only people who had ever truly been hers. The singing of the women rose and fell, but it sounded distant, like it belonged to another world. She did not scream. She did not collapse. She simply went quiet. This can't be real. They'll come back. They have to. That night, the house felt empty in a way no darkness could explain. The silence pressed against her chest, loud and unforgiving. Every corner held a memory, her mother's laughter, her father's footsteps, now turned into echoes that hurt to hear. How does a child learn to breathe again when the air itself feels broken? By sunset, Era was no longer just a girl with dreams. She was an orphan, and in a single day, the life that once felt certain slipped through her fingers like sand. The funeral ground was still heavy with grief. Fresh soil lay piled over two graves, dark and damp, as if the earth itself was reluctant to let go. Women stood in small groups, their voices low, their eyes swollen from crying. The wind moved slowly, carrying the scent of dust and sorrow. Era stood alone, her small hands clenched inside the folds of her black dress, staring at the place where her parents now rested. She felt smaller than ever before. Just as the final prayers faded, a figure stepped forward from the crowd. It was her aunt. Her wrapper brushed the ground as she walked, her face streaked with tears that glistened in the sun. She pulled Era into an embrace that smelled of expensive perfume, not grief. "My poor child," the aunt cried loudly, her voice trembling for everyone to hear. "What a cruel world to take both your parents at once." Era did not respond. Her body remained stiff, unsure whether to lean into the comfort or pull away from it. Then the aunt straightened and turned to the villagers. "Her father was my brother," she said, placing a hand over her chest. "His blood is my blood. I will take Era into my home. She will live with my children. I will raise her as my own." A murmur of approval swept through the crowd. "She is a good woman," someone whispered. "Taking in an orphan brings blessings," another said. The village elders nodded slowly, satisfied. Words of praise fell on the aunt like garlands. Kind, generous, selfless. She bowed her head modestly, accepting their admiration with practiced grace. Era listened, her heart beating faster. Was this a miracle? Was this the answer to her prayers? Maybe I won't be alone. Maybe I'll still have a family. The aunt turned back to her, cupping Era's face gently. Don't be afraid, she whispered. Come with me. You are safe now. Safe. The word echoed in Era's mind, wrapping around her broken heart like a fragile thread of hope. She nodded slowly, not because she understood, but because she needed to believe someone would protect her. As the crowd began to disperse, Era glanced once more at the fresh graves. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the earth. She pressed her lips together, holding back tears that no longer seemed to end. I'll make you proud, she whispered silently. I'll survive. Promise. What she did not know, what no one in that crowd knew, was that kindness spoken loudly is sometimes the most dangerous kind. Behind the tears and promises, something cold and calculating had already made its decision. The aunt turned away from the graves, her face settling into a calm smile as she led Era toward an uncertain future. How could a child recognize a lie when it wears the face of love? The journey to her aunt's house felt longer than it really was. Era sat quietly on the crowded bus, her small bag pressed against her chest like a shield. The road was dusty, the air thick, but her heart carried a fragile hope. Her aunt had spoken gently at the funeral. She had promised safety, family, a home. When they arrived, Era looked up at the house with wide eyes. The walls were painted, the roof strong and shining. Children's voices echoed from inside. For a moment, her heart lifted. Maybe this is where my life begins again. But the warmth did not last. As soon as the gate closed behind them, her aunt's smile disappeared, like a light switched off. Her voice changed too, losing its softness, becoming flat and firm. Put your bag down, she said. Era followed her inside, passing rooms filled with beds, pillows, and neatly folded blankets. Her cousins rushed ahead, laughing, disappearing into those rooms without a glance back. Era waited, unsure, standing awkwardly in the hallway. Then her aunt turned toward the kitchen. This is where you'll sleep, she said. Era looked around. The kitchen floor was bare concrete, cold and cracked. A thin, worn mat was dropped onto the ground with a dull sound. No bed, no pillow, no door. My children need their space, the aunt added, already turning away. You are strong. You will manage. The words hit Era slowly, sinking in one by one. Sleep? Here? She swallowed hard, nodding because she didn't know what else to do. The kitchen smelled of smoke and old food. The floor felt cold even through her slippers. Maybe it's just for tonight, she told herself. Maybe tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow came with a list of chores. Before dawn, Era was woken to fetch water. She swept floors, washed dishes, cooked meals she would not eat. While her cousins dressed for school, she scrubbed their uniforms. While they ate warm breakfast, she stood aside, waiting for scraps, if there were any. By nightfall, her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. That evening, she watched her cousins disappear into their rooms again, doors closing softly behind them. Laughter floated out, careless and light. Era lay down on her mat, staring up at the dark ceiling, the cold floor seeping into her bones. How had everything changed so fast? Yesterday, she was someone's daughter. Today, she was invisible. No one asked if she was tired. No one asked if she was hungry. The word niece was never spoken again. In its place came silence and commands. Do this. Clean that. Hurry. The kitchen became her bedroom. Her world shrank to four walls and a cold floor. Era turned onto her side, hugging her bag close. Inside it was the only photo she had left of her parents. She pressed it against her chest, blinking back tears. I must endure. I have no other choice. Days stopped feeling like days. They blurred into each other, measured not by calendars but by hunger, pain, and exhaustion. Every morning before the sky even began to lighten, Era's eyes would open to the sound of the rooster and the ache in her bones. The cold kitchen floor greeted her again, just as unforgiving as the night before. She rose quietly. Silence was safer. Buckets in hand, she walked to the stream while the village still slept. The water was heavy, pulling her shoulders down as she carried it back. By the time she returned, her arms burned, and her feet were already sore. There was no time to rest. Firewood had to be lit. Food had to be cooked. Baths had to be heated, not for her, but for her cousins. Smoke filled her eyes as she cooked breakfast she would not eat. Her stomach growled loudly, but she ignored it. She had learned that hunger was easier to bear than punishment. When the family sat to eat, Era stood aside, waiting. Sometimes there were leftovers. Sometimes there were only bones, scraped clean and cold. Then came the sun. By mid-morning, Era balanced a tray of sachet water on her head and stepped onto the road. The heat pressed down on her like a weight, turning the earth into fire. "Pure water. Cold water," she called, her voice growing weaker with every hour. Sweat soaked her clothes. Dust stuck to her skin. People stared. Some looked away in discomfort. Some shook their heads in pity. "Such a young girl," they whispered. "An orphan." Each word burned deeper than the sun above her. Is pity kinder than cruelty? By evening, she returned with a few coins, every one placed directly into her aunt's waiting hand. No thanks followed. Only orders. More washing. More scrubbing. More work until her fingers cracked and bled. At night, the insults came easily. "This food is useless," one cousin sneered, pushing her plate to the floor. Era dropped to her knees without a word, gathering scattered rice with trembling hands. Laughter followed. Her aunt watched, amused, reminding her how lucky she was to be fed at all. Sometimes the cane came out. The sting landed without warning. Across her back, her arms, her legs. Era learned quickly not to cry out. Tears made things worse, so she cried in silence. "If I don't make a sound, maybe it will end sooner." When midnight finally arrived, Era lay on her mat, staring into darkness, holding her breath as if even breathing too loudly might anger someone. Her body was tired beyond words, but sleep did not come easily. Hunger twisted inside her. Pain throbbed in her muscles. She pressed her lips together, forcing the sobs back into her chest. Months passed this way. No school. No laughter. No childhood. Just work, hunger, and quiet endurance. And still, somewhere deep inside her, something refused to die. The house was silent, but not safe. Era moved quietly through the dim corridors, carrying a tray of dishes she had scrubbed clean, her arms aching, her fingers raw. The laughter and chatter of her cousins had faded into the rooms above. Every corner seemed to hold judgment, every shadow a reminder of her place on the cold kitchen floor. She paused, pressing a hand against her chest, feeling the hollow ache of loneliness. Then, from the darkness, a soft voice broke through. "Ara." She froze. Zara, her cousin, stepped forward, careful not to alert anyone else. Her eyes were gentle but fierce, filled with a determination Era had never seen. She gestured toward a small corner of the kitchen. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Ara azitata. Could this really be trust? Could anyone truly care? No one has ever offered me kindness without strings. Why now? Zara smiled, lighting a small candle that flickered and danced in the dim space. The warm glow seemed magical, painting the kitchen walls in amber light. She opened a textbook she had tucked beneath her arm, its pages filled with equations, stories, and diagrams. "I'll teach you," Zara whispered. "Everything I learn, I'll share with you. English, math, science, everything. Night, after everyone sleeps." Era's heart raced. The thought of learning again, of reclaiming what had been stolen from her by grief and cruelty, made her hands tremble. But she nodded slowly, not trusting the hope that bloomed inside her. "Why?" Era asked, her voice barely more than a breath. "Why would you help me?" Zara looked her straight in the eye. "Because you are not a maid. You are my cousin. You are family. My mother may have forgotten that, But I haven't. Era felt a spark she hadn't felt in months, maybe years. She picked up a pencil and followed Zara's instructions as the candlelight flickered across the pages. Pythagoras' theorem, the chemical formulas, the rules of grammar. Era absorbed everything with a hunger that went beyond the body. She realized learning could be a shield, a weapon, a way out. Education is your weapon, Zara said softly. It's the one thing my mother cannot take from you once you have it. It will set you free. Hours passed unnoticed. The crickets outside whispered along, and the rest of the household slept, unaware that in the kitchen, a quiet rebellion had begun. Era's tired eyes shone with newfound purpose. Every solved problem, every mastered word, felt like reclaiming a piece of her stolen childhood. For the first time since her parents' death, hope returned. Not loud, not demanding, but soft and steady, like a candle fighting the darkness. Maybe I can rise again. Maybe this is how I survive. As the night deepened, Era packed the book away, her heart lighter, her spirit a little stronger. The kitchen floor was still cold, the chores still waiting. But now, within the shadows and the flickering candlelight, a secret path forward had been carved. The morning was darker than usual, though the sun had barely risen. Era's heart pounded against her ribs as she adjusted the thin wrapper around her shoulders. In it was hidden a folded envelope, the scholarship application Zara had carefully filled out in secret. Her small feet ached at the thought of the long walk ahead, but her mind held something far heavier: fear. Fear of being caught, fear of punishment, fear that all she had worked for would vanish in a single shout. Could one girl's courage survive so much danger? I have to do this. I must. Zara had whispered instructions the night before, outlining a careful plan. I'll tell Mama I sent you to town for something, she said softly. You'll have 3 hours. That's enough to reach the exam hall, sit the test, and return. Era's hands trembled as she clutched the envelope, feeling the weight of her entire future folded within it. She stepped into the darkened village, the only sounds her slippered feet against the dusty path and her own heartbeat. The shortcut Zara had taught her twisted through alleys and over small streams. Every moment she feared a neighbor, an auntie's messenger, or some unexpected gaze that could expose her mission. The exam center loomed ahead after 5 grueling kilometers. The painted building looked ordinary, almost kind, but Era knew that inside, her courage would be tested. Candidates walked in confidently, carrying clean uniforms and shiny pens. Era felt like an intruder, dressed in her worn wrapper, her sandals battered, her face pale with both exhaustion and hope. I belong here as much as anyone else. I just have to prove it. The exam supervisor, a stern woman with glasses, stopped her at the gate. Where is your invitation? She demanded. Era's hands shook as she presented the carefully folded letter. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the world might collapse. But the woman sighed and pointed to a seat. Hall 3, number 42. 2 hours. Begin. Era sank into her chair, gripping the pencil as if it were a lifeline. Around her, others whispered, flipped through last-minute notes, adjusted uniforms. But Era had no notes, only the lessons Zara had whispered in the dark, the formulas traced in the air, the essays written in her mind by candlelight. The exam began. Biology, anatomy, chemistry, English questions fell like stones at her feet. She wrote from memory, from heart, from every quiet night spent learning under shadows. Sweat dripped down her back, her hands cramped, but she did not stop. Every answer was a step toward freedom. 2 hours passed like minutes. When the papers were collected, Era exhaled for the first time in weeks. She walked out of that hall knowing something she hadn't allowed herself to hope. She had given her all. The journey back felt lighter, the miles shorter. Every step whispered a quiet promise. Courage may be risky, but it can carry you farther than fear ever could. The postman's footsteps echoed through the dusty village lane, carrying a promise Era had waited for with bated breath. She was washing clothes at the compound tap, her hands raw from scrubbing, when she heard the familiar whistle of his arrival. Her heart leapt, imagining the envelope that would change everything. A ticket to the future she had fought for under candlelight and scorching sun. But before she could move, another shadow appeared. Kem, her cousin, stepped forward, eyes narrowing as she spotted the envelope clutched in the postman's hand. Jealousy had already planted its roots. She can't take this from me. She doesn't deserve it, Era thought, sensing the dark weight of someone else's envy. Before Era could reach for it, Kem snatched the letter with trembling fingers, hiding it quickly in the folds of her wrapper. She read the words, disbelief and rage twisting her features. Her sister had failed last year, yet this orphan, this servant, had taken the prize. The bile rose in her throat as she imagined the humiliation and loss her mother might suffer at the news. Instead of celebration, Era felt the world shift beneath her. When she returned to the kitchen, dusty, tired, but proud of herself, her aunt's voice thundered before she even entered. "Thief! Ungrateful girl! You took money from me!" Era froze, the words striking like a blow. Her hands trembled as she tried to explain, to speak, but the accusation was sharp, slicing through her. I didn't, I swear," she whispered, her voice breaking. But who would believe a girl who had always been invisible? Who would question the words of a daughter? The cane came down, cutting across her back with a painful rhythm. Era fell to her knees on the cold kitchen floor, clutching herself, tasting blood and shame. Her stomach curled in hunger and fear. Tears pooled in her eyes, but she had learned well, to cry silently, to absorb pain without sound. Why does kindness always seem punished? She thought, the injustice burning hotter than the cane's sting. Hours passed in blurred agony. She worked, scrubbed, and obeyed, while her body and spirit ached with exhaustion. The scholarship letter, hidden by envy, had turned her triumph into torment. Era felt as though the sun had disappeared, leaving only shadows and cruelty in its place. Even in her darkest moments, a spark remained. The knowledge of what she had achieved, what she had earned in the quiet of midnight lessons, was hers alone. No one could take that from her, even if they could hide the paper, even if they could punish her body. The night crept in. Era lay on her mat, breath shallow, stomach empty, and whispered a promise to herself. She would rise. She would survive. She would reclaim what was rightfully hers. The village square buzzed with tension, a mix of curiosity and unease hanging in the hot afternoon air. Women abandoned their cooking fires, men set aside their tools, and children pressed close, wide-eyed, as the drumbeat echoed 3 sharp times, summoning the elders. Era stood at the edge of the gathering, her hands trembling, the memory of Cain's strikes and hidden letters still fresh on her skin. She could feel the weight of every unfair word, every stolen moment of joy, pressing down on her. Her aunt arrived, draped in her finest wrapper, earrings glinting in the sun, her posture rigid with arrogance. The chief elder, Matsi Okafor, lifted his hand, silencing the murmurs. "Goy, daughter of Okonkwo, you have been summoned to answer an accusation," he announced. The village held its breath. Auntie's eyes flickered, attempting surprise. "Accusation against me? Who dares?" she demanded, voice loud and calculated. "Your niece, Alara Okonkwo," Matsi said, holding up the envelope that had been hidden for so long. "This letter arrived 14 days ago. She was never told. You concealed it." The crowd erupted in whispers, voices like a swarm of bees. Auntie's pride faltered for the first time, her carefully maintained mask slipping. "Ridiculous. I never saw any letter. Bring forward Kem," she commanded, her voice cracking under the weight of attention. The crowd erupted in whispers, voices like a swarm of bees. Auntie's pride faltered for the first time, her carefully maintained mask slipping. "Ridiculous. I never saw any letter. Bring forward Kem," she commanded, her voice cracking under the weight of attention. Kem, pale and trembling, was pushed forward. The eyes of the elders bored into her, and the shame she had carried for days boiled to the surface. I hid the letter," she confessed, voice barely audible at first, then louder, shaking with guilt. "I read it, and I hid it. I didn't want her to have it." Era felt a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. Could justice finally reach her? It's true. The world can see now. They can't take this from me anymore, she thought, hope flickering like sunlight through clouds. Matsi Okafor's eyes scanned the crowd, then returned to Auntie Goy. You made her a servant, not a family member. You hid her opportunity, crushed her childhood, and sought to keep her from her destiny. The village shall see that this injustice is corrected. The elders decreed that Era would be immediately freed from her aunt's house. The village treasury would cover her transportation, supplies, and support for school. Auntie Goy would repay the community through labor, and her name would bear the shame of her actions. A wave of murmurs and whispers washed over the square as the villagers turned their backs on Auntie. Her greetings were ignored. Her pride rotted like fruit left in the sun. Era's heart swelled, not with vengeance, but with quiet triumph. The path to her dreams was finally clear. She could leave the cold kitchen floor behind and walk toward the future she had fought for in secret. The stolen letter was restored, justice had spoken, and the weight of oppression lifted from her shoulders. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and hope, a sharp contrast to the dust and smoke of Era's past. Her crisp white uniform gleamed under the bright lights, the stethoscope around her neck a quiet testament to years of struggle, sacrifice, and relentless determination. Nurse Alara Okonkwo, once the girl who slept on the cold kitchen floor, moved with calm authority, checking charts, adjusting for drips, and offering comfort to patients. But that day, fate had a different test. A name on the patient list froze her in place. Mongoy Okonkwo. Her heart skipped. She turned and found her aunt, the woman whose cruelty had haunted Era's youth, shrunken, gray, and frail in a hospital gown. The same hands that once struck her, the same words that accused and shamed, now trembled weakly as they clutched the side rails of the bed. Could mercy really be stronger than anger? All these years, all the suffering, and now this. What will I do? Era thought, her mind a whirlwind of memories. The cold floor, the harsh words, the hidden letters, the midnight lessons, the fear and hunger. And yet, standing there in the bright hospital corridor, she felt a new kind of power, the power to choose her response. Her aunt's voice, once booming and commanding, was now a fragile whisper. Please help me.
I'm sorry. I'm dying.
Era's eyes softened, not out of obligation, but out of the woman she had become. Every lesson, every hardship, every secret night of study had taught her not just knowledge, but compassion. She remembered her parents' voices, reminding her that strength was not only in skill but in mercy. She moved efficiently, administering medication, checking vitals, and monitoring treatment, all while her aunt watched, too weak to protest. Every action was precise, every gesture careful, yet laced with quiet dignity. Era could have let anger dictate her choice. She could have walked away and let the woman who caused so much pain suffer alone. But she didn't. Mercy is not weakness. It is my victory, she thought. Days passed. Her aunt recovered under Era's care, the power dynamic reversed, the past laid bare by the strength of patience and skill. When discharge came, Era gave her aunt the final words she would ever speak to her. I forgive you, but I will never forget. Leave my life. The corridor, once just a place of work, became a stage for triumph over cruelty. Era had built her empire of knowledge, skill, and compassion upon the cold mat of the kitchen floor where she once slept. The girl who was beaten and starved now held the power to heal, and she chose to heal fully, not with vengeance, but with the grace that only suffering and resilience could teach.